Sup, gamers? Rainy Potato here to rank the best overall heroes in Darkest Dungeon 2. We'll cover every hero, their various builds and roles, and how they fit overall in your party. First up is Plague Doctor, your primary healer. The Plague Doctor features two of the most consistent and powerful heals in the game, with Battlefield Medicine providing a heal if below 50 HP along with dot clear, and Indiscriminate Science will also heal below 50% and clear all positive tokens and convert them to healing, doing the same for negative when upgraded. No other healer comes close to this. Others have bigger heals, but usually with more difficult conditions and longer cooldowns. In addition to this, the PD has two pretty strong DPS builds considering she's already elite in one role. With Surgeon, she gets a nice boost to HP and an even bigger boost to healing, along with a buff to her Incision at the cost of her Blight. Alternatively, you can run Alchemist, which sacrifices HP for dot resist and more Blight penetration, stacking some absolutely absurd DOT numbers with range to hit any rank. Her utility path is bad and cringe. Most heroes have at least one underwhelming build. There's never a bad time to bring a Plague Doctor. She's not only strong against all acts and all bosses, but she's much easier to use for beginners with her uncomplicated attacks and heals. Easily the top tier of DD2. Grave Robber is a shifty, if fragile DPS hero, with a decent variety of damage based mostly around crits. A real triple threat in terms of damage, dealing solid melee, ranged, and DOT to make her among the most versatile DPS. She has high base speed and fairly low HP, balanced by the fact that she has two of the best self-heals in the game, Absinthe, which not only heals but provides dodge tokens, and Dead of Night, which is a corpse clear and stealth without any threshold on the heal. Nightsworn is my favorite build, reducing her HP to extreme danger territory but getting a major boost to her two highest damage dealing moves, Pirouette and Lunge, along with a benefit to stealth. Both skills have a naturally high crit rate to take further advantage of the high end damage range. Deadeye is mediocre since her direct range damage isn't great outside Pirouette, and it nerfs two of her most useful melee attacks. I often rather take Wanderer instead to keep my versatility. Venom Drop is interesting, giving Blight benefits and making Flashing Daggers usable, but it's fairly weak against bosses and the stealth benefits are hard to set up, but is very synergetic with the new Flagellant. Her DPS is not quite as consistent as the top heroes, however, and despite her sustain, the HP is still a persistent problem, so I have to rank her overall in the solid tier. Highwayman is a pure DPS hero with insane range and high potential. He's only got one real build, with a few variations, but it's among the strongest in the game. You always take Sharp Shot, his other paths are memes, and load him up with Take Aim, arguably the best ability in the game, along with all his ranged attacks. He slots best in ranks 2 or 3 for his double tap, but you can start him in 1 to nuke with Point Blank, or he can serve in 4 in a pinch with Grape Shot and Pistol Shot. He does elite and consistent with Take Aim crit damage to a variety of targets. His rogue build is garbage. You don't want to sit Highwayman in rank 1, and you get the same boost to Point Blank Shot with Sharp Shot. Yellow Hand is kind of fun, but the buffs end up pointless and you lose most of his kit. His second best build is probably Wanderer, and you can mix and match his ranged attacks with his powerful Duelist Advance, one of the better action economy skills in the game. However, as good as this one skill is, it just doesn't match up to Sharp Shot, especially since that path gets speed for some reason to further benefit from the Sprawl trinkets. His utility skills are fun and can be equipped for niche scenarios, but are not the bread and butter. He lacks any self-heal and does nothing for his allies, of course, but he doesn't really need to. Easy fit for the elite tier. The Man-at-Arms is a Giga Tank with 3 powerful paths, a top-tier stress healer, and a decent secondary DPS with Vanguard. He's also got the most broadly useful kit in the game for a variety of builds. Basically all Man-at-Arms builds pick up Bolster and Retribution, with Bolster being the top stress heal in the game, and Retribution being the best action economy generator in the game, especially with the plethora of tank trinkets it enables. Defend is also usually equipped on all builds, being crucial to a number of boss battles and just eternally useful protection for your weaker allies. With Vanguard, you get a strong boost to his best attacks, with Crush being respectable damage able to hit the first 3 ranks, and also heal on combo, which is a weaker heal than the other tanks, but more than enough when you consider what else he brings to the table. Bulwark does pretty respectable damage with Rampart, and if you take the time to set up stuns, it's a pretty strong path, and of course you can turtle up with Stand Fast Plus and literally never die. Stand Fast Plus is also useful against the Exemplar as well as the Act 3 boss. Man-at-Arms also neuters the Exemplar through Bellow, removing Riposte, doing the same against the Act 4 boss. Withdrawal Plus is another fantastic emergency heal, and you can pair it with his stun on combo with the speed to cheat out some stuns. And Command finds value in a few fights, notably Act 2 boss with Blind. Sergeant Path is his weakest path, losing damage but gaining move resist and unreliable dot resist, but solves the Leviathan by itself as well as Phase 1 of the Act 4 boss, among other uses, and you don't end up missing the damage too much if you play in a more support role, still ending up one of the strongest builds in the game. Man-at-Arms is neck and neck with Plague Doctor, both being far and away the best heroes in their specific role, but I'll give the most minor of edges to Plague Doctor just because I value healing in worst case scenarios. Hellion is a dominant DPS, playing one role but playing it very well. You really only want to run Ravager Path and smack things really hard, making her an entirely uncomplicated hero, which is a benefit in a complicated game like Darkest Dungeon 2. She doesn't have any rank flexibility, needing to be in 1 most of the time, but it doesn't really matter because she's the best there anyways. What makes her a cut above other DPS is she has tank tier HP and multiple self-heals, making her far more sustainable than the Highwayman, for example. Her bleed path has been buffed, but I hate the HP loss and the inflexibility of her bleed skills, and Carcass is a dumb meme even if it's technically elite in this very niche role, so she's not as versatile as some of the top level heroes and is definitely a tier below Man-at-Arms and Plague Doctor, but she fits solidly in the elite tier, easily above Highwayman. Runaway has exactly one build essentially, and it's okay if unspectacular. You want to park her in rank 3 or 4, assign her Arsonist or Orphan Path, if Orphan Path rank 4, and spam Firefly while sprinkling in a few smoke screens and cauterize as necessary. She can do some heavy damage, though barely better or sometimes worse than PD depending on the target. Dragonfly is a strong skill, but she's still mostly worthless in the front row. There are too many elite frontliners that don't have mediocre HP to put up here for one ability that is irrelevant against most bosses. She's easy enough to play and fits in a large number of scenarios just on account of being the only burn hero and one of a few happy in rank 4, and fits cleanly in the solid tier above Grave Robber. Jester has a wild, diverse kit, filling multiple roles, from stress healer, to big DPS, to utility and combo generation. His best and only real path, Virtuoso, gives him elite speed and allows him to naturally use the OP sprawl trinkets and open most combats, often with arguably the most powerful skill in the game, Encore. He has 2 main builds. With Encore Plus, there's a 3-turn loop where you open Encore, then solo into a finale for giant damage without threatening your team's positioning. He can also be a movement, or rank 3 immobilized, combo generator, hitting Fade to Black for blind and combo or Razor's Wit for combo and dodge, and all of this with the strongest single target stress heal in the game. He also has a bleed useful mostly for melting bosses, especially with upgraded Vuln application. However, the dedicated bleed build is not it, as the single target doesn't scale and the AoE isn't relevant in the hardest fights of the game. The Intermezzo path is interesting, but the randomness makes it weaker than his standard builds. The only issues compared to the top heroes is he has average HP, even with Virtuoso, and has no heals or other defensive buffs to aid himself. Still, easily atop the elite category. Leper is Big Daddy, with the highest base HP in the game and 2 very distinct builds. He's got the Tempest build, where he sacrifices HP for big damage and debuff resist to help fend off the blind. This path he still has respectable HP and the highest potential DPS in the game, though it usually takes some setup, has no range, and no DOT or other block penetration, most of which is fine against bosses. He's also extremely self-sufficient with heals and stress heals, and with Tempest doesn't even need combo help for his blind most of the time. The Poet path is entirely different, slashing his damage in exchange for his HP back, along with move and stun resist and a healing boost. Combined with his multiple taunts and absurd heal potential, this is one of the better tanks in the game, though not quite on Man-at-Arms level because of lack of riposte and block plus generation, though the heal can make him last just as long if used properly. With both kits you can round it out with useful utility, getting Corpse Clear, Daze, and Block Strip, most of which is niche but nice to have available. With a lack of range and tempo he's not quite elite, but easily atop the solid tier. Occultist has 3 distinct builds, each with good potential but most with dangerous downside. He can be a ranged nuker, sitting in the back with Warlock and spamming Meatball and Spaghetti, with a pole thrown in now and again. This does huge damage, but unfortunately his pitiful HP along with his self-burn with Empower makes him far and away the most fragile hero in the game. With Ritualist, you can take advantage of his curses with increased application, being able to combo and weaken, or entirely strip dodge and add Vuln. These curses also give free tokens to further boost your hero, at the cost of self-Vuln at turn start, which again makes Occultist extremely fragile. You also get a healing boost, but his heal absolutely sucks. Occultist is an absolute disgrace to the healer class. His final path, Aspirant, has much fewer downsides, with bigger HP boost and block plus, but unfortunately not much upside. His stabs are mediocre at best, especially for someone who has to be in the front three, though he at least still has pull and meatball as options, even if they aren't as tasty as Warlock. The rest of his skills are memes, and I class Occultist mostly as a meme hero, with too many downsides and only one real strong payoff. Dump this dude in the trash tier. Vestal has a huge kit and very distinct paths that would suggest a varied playstyle, but unfortunately most of her paths pale in comparison to the GOAT, Seraph. Here you get a boost to Consecration, Duration, and Mantra becomes an elite multi-heal. Even with this path, she's a bit slow without a Jester to encore her, which is a powerhouse duo, as she can Consecrate rank 1 for some juicy finales. With both of her Consecrations up, she gets at least 2 Conviction a turn, which means you're getting a double damage Judgment nuke every turn after setup, which is pretty wild damage for a healer main. Her heals are big, but mostly worse than PD just because of the lower thresholds and longer cooldowns, but at least with Seraph you'll do fine in most scenarios. Her tank build is pretty cringe, primarily because she lacks a taunt, rather just a simple guard, and partially because her front rank damage takes too long to charge up. She's sometimes fun to play up front, but she's not very effective. Beyond her standard Seraph skills and heals, she has a lot of utility, from dot clear to dodge removal, but her tempo is often a problem with her slow developing skill set and overall speed. Certainly can go above Leper in the solid tier though. And finally Flagellant, a blight-based hero with an insane kit. He's at his best in a blight build, able to nuke a heavily blighted foe, or AoE a whole party eating blight damage. This is his best build and role, rank 2 with Alchemist, just raining down damage. His utility is even stronger in isolation, though it's not a complete build for the most part, just a few skills to slap on the end of the bar. Of course he's got Deathless, which varies from self-damage for a big heal with no threshold, thereby opening up more of his kit, which often requires a low HP threshold, to a double heal which makes the party near unkillable. He can also absorb dots and more notably stress, and his unique meltdown effect called Toxic is less damaging to party affinity and himself, though it's still not recommended outside major bosses. The one major downside of this hero is the death mini-boss that chases him around at the end of fights, as a poorly timed arrival can spell doom for your expedition. However, despite this downside and the overall complication of his kit, you can't not put him in the elite tier. Arguably better than any of them, but I'll put him in the back for now until I get a better handle on his skill set. Overall, Darkest Dungeon 2 features a wide variety of heroes, each with unique builds, none of them outright unplayable, but a handful stand out above the rest, just like the first game. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos every day. And join my Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access to my upcoming videos.